You've frequently heard it said there is power in prayer. And if that's true, which it is, there must be real power in persistent prayer. Persistent prayer is biblical. You know, those relentless prayers that refuse to give up. Well, hey, my friend, my name is Kris Reece, and I want to welcome you back to another edition of the Building Faith podcast, where my hope is to bring you biblical solutions to life's tough challenges. Matthew 7:7 reminds us to ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and it will be open to you. So is prayer simply a matter of endurance? Meaning if I keep on persisting, eventually I'll get what I'm praying for? Well, there's a dangerous line that we cross when we take persistent prayer too far. In fact, there are 3 destructive patterns that we can fall into if we rely solely on the persistence of prayer. So number 1 is thinking that prayer is persuasion. Look, we can't change God. It's arrogance if we actually think we can. Prayer is not persuasion. God is not going to conform His will to our whim. And once we cross into thinking that prayer is persuasion, that leap isn't that long into manipulation. Proverbs 19:21 tells us that many are the plans in the mind of a man, but it is the purpose of the Lord that will stand. Yes, there are times in the Bible where God does change His mind, but those times were conditional. I will do this if. I will not do this if. And it certainly happens every time a sinner repents as well. God then changes His mind we now go from being an enemy of God to being His beloved child. Number 2, thinking that prayer is a form of mysticism. Look, much of the New Age occult practices have seeped into the church. Beliefs like the law of attraction, which is basically what I put out, I'll get back, mantras, and a lot of other mystical type of teachings have become a regular part of a Christian's belief, even if they don't realize it. And many of these mystical practices can translate to prayer when one believes that simply praying prayers of repetition will bring back good things to you. Thinking that your persistence somehow has power puts you into a more magical state of mind rather than a surrendered one. If I keep praying, I'll get what I want. And basically, we reduce God to a formula, and dare I say, some magic formula. Look, God is not a formula to be figured out. He is our Father, and He is to be trusted. No one understands why He blesses some and not others. No one knows why He acts quickly with one and not another. God does not enable us to always understand everything perfectly or completely right now. And when I am tempted to throw in the prayer towel, I am reminded of the story of the persistent widow in Luke 18. So let's see for ourselves, starting in verse 1. Then Jesus told His disciples a parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up. He said, in a certain town there was a judge who neither feared God nor cared what people thought. And there was a widow in that town who kept coming to him with a plea, grant me justice against my adversary. Verse 4, for some time he refused, but he finally said to himself, even though I don't fear God or care what people think, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will see that she gets justice so that she won't eventually come and attack me. And the Lord said, listen to what the unjust judge says. And will not God bring about justice for His chosen ones who cry out to Him day and night? Will He keep putting them off? I tell you, He will see that they get justice and quickly. However, when the Son of Man comes, will He find faith on the earth? Does this mean that if I keep asking that I can eventually wear God down and He'll give me what I'm asking for? Well, we have to be careful not to reduce God's sovereignty to a magic formula. And number 3 is thinking that prayer is all about me. James 4:3 tells us you ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly to spend it on your passions. If the purpose of your persistent prayers are solely to get what you want, my friend, you've missed the point of prayer. prayer is partnership. Prayer is God's way of enlisting you and me in His plan. And when our prayers are a constant focus on what God should be giving me, I'm basically like a child. And I'm not talking like a biblical childlikeness. I'm talking a selfish childishness. Like a child wants what he wants and he wants it now. He never realizes what he's asking for actually may be harmful to him. And so does an immature, me-focused Christian. If you are praying for that job or that boyfriend to propose and it's all about getting what you want instead of allowing God's will to prevail in your life, you're like James 4:3 and you will not receive because your motives are off. Even in the cases of what would seem to be God's will, like justice and healing, my friend, we still have to remain open to His timing. So, is persistent prayer biblical? Absolutely. If what you're praying for is in line with His will and His word, then yes, ask and keep on asking. He does promise that He hears you and He will answer. Just be prepared for whatever that answer may be. God knows your requests, my friend, even before we make them. So then you might be asking, okay, so why pray? Because there is still something significant about persistence in prayer. Persistent prayer prepares the prayer. Persistent prayer produces patience. It keeps me waiting on God and His timing. Persistent prayer produces humility. It helps me to remember that I'm not in charge, God is. Persistent prayer produces character. More than the answered prayer, persistent prayer will change the prayer as it kills the flesh. And finally, persistent prayer produces maturity. God is always willing to give every one of His promises found in His word, but persistent prayer prepares you to receive and handle the answer. Years ago, my husband and I were in a legal battle with a very wicked woman. And despite being in the right, we never obtained victory in the court system. So this emboldened this already arrogant woman. And year after year, we would fight and pray, and it seemed like there would be no end in sight. But I knew that righteousness and justice were the foundation of God's throne. I believed that He would bring victory for His children, us, but didn't understand what He was waiting for. So fast forward about 8 years, and in hindsight, oh, my friend, there is so much that God changed in us during that time that I truly believe that it was more about refining us than it was about bringing the justice when we expected it. Yes, God could have brought that justice right from the start, but He chose to use that time and our persistent prayers to change us. Now, we are not only vindicated, we are changed. Praise God. So, will God give you everything that you've prayed for if you're persistent? Yes, if it is in line with His plan, His purpose, and His promise. Ask and keep on asking. But remember the words of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Nevertheless, Lord, not my will, but yours be done. You want to learn how to clearly hear from God? I want to invite you to go ahead and check out this episode right here. If you are struggling in your faith or you want to grow in your faith, I want to invite you to grab a copy of our free 5-day mountain moving faith devotional. I'll go ahead and include a link in the description section below.